Neighbors were left shaken.
It's a tragedy, and I feel so terrible for this family. Horrible, horrible tragedy.
As she pulled a wagon with Lulu and Leo through the lobby of 57 West 75th Street, she asked the doorman, "Is the mom upstairs?" He told her no, she'd left. An hour later, the children were dead.
Lucia Ursula, or Lulu, Krim was born on May 25, 2006, to her parents, Kevin and Marina Krim. Her younger brother, Leo Hidalgo Krim, was born 4 years later on September 30th, 2010. The two children also had a sister named Nessie, who was a year older than Leo. They lived along with their parents, Marina and Kevin, in their Upper West Side Manhattan apartment in New York City, which was located just a block away from Central Park. The family had moved there from San Francisco in 2010. Their father, Kevin, was a digital content executive at the television network CNBC. The children's mother, Marina, a former kindergarten teacher, was now a stay-at-home mom, art teacher, and blogger who chronicled the children's lives on her mommy blog entitled Life with the Little Krim Kids. Shortly after the family had moved to New York in 2010, when Marina was pregnant with Leo, she had been approached by a woman named Celia while she was attending Lulu's ballet class. Celia was a nanny, and her employers sent their daughter to the same dance class and bilingual preschool that Lulu went to. So Celia had begun chatting with Marina, and eventually she would ask her if she had a nanny for the children. When she told her that she did not, but she and her husband Kevin had been considering getting an extra pair of hands to help with childcare, Celia mentioned that her sister Jocelyn was looking for a job and would be perfect for the position. Shortly after, Jocelyn Ortega would be introduced to the Krim family, later being hired by them to begin nannying for their 3 children on a part-time basis. She then continued to work for the family for a couple of years. That, however, would come to an end one horrifying day in October of 2012. On October 25th, Jocelyn was watching Lulu and Leo, while their mother Marina brought their sister Nessie to her swim lessons. Lulu was supposed to have ballet class that afternoon, and it was decided that Marina would meet the nanny and the children there. Yet when Marina arrived at the dance studio that afternoon, the nanny and her children were nowhere to be seen. So she tried calling Jocelyn, but received no response, and her text messages to her would also go unread. Worried that something had happened, Marina hurried back home with Nessie to their apartment on 57 West 75th Street, arriving around 5:35 p.m. As she entered the home, it was dark and quiet, and she assumed that no one was there. So the mother, along with 3-year-old Nessie, returned to the lobby of the building to ask the doorman if he had seen the nanny and the 2 children. He confirmed that he had seen them. They had entered the building and gone upstairs just a little while earlier. Marina then returned to her apartment, and shortly after, a blood-curdling scream rang out. The mother had stumbled upon an absolutely horrifying scene. She walked into their bathroom and saw a bathtub full of blood. Inside was 6-year-old Lulu and 2-year-old Leo. They were lifeless, their eyes open and covered in blood. The children each had multiple stab wounds to their bodies. Their nanny, Jocelyn, was lying next to the tub on the floor with a knife in her hand. Upon Marina entering the bathroom, she had taken that knife and slit her wrists. Then she began violently stabbing herself in the neck and throat. Marina immediately grabbed Nessie, running out of the apartment building, screaming that her children were dead. She even started banging her head on a marble pillar as hard as she could, trying to wake herself up from the awful nightmare that she had just stumbled upon. The apartment building's doorman was the one who ended up calling emergency services after he saw the frantic mother. When first responders arrived on the scene, Marina and Nessie were escorted out of the building with a sheet covering their heads, trying to shield them from the horror. Little Lulu and Leo were then wheeled out together on one stretcher. Their neck wounds were so severe that at first the paramedics believed that they had been decapitated. 6-year-old Lulu had been stabbed more than 30 times, and 2-year-old Leo had been stabbed 5 times. The children's father, 37-year-old Kevin Krim, was currently headed home from a business trip in San Francisco, and he would be notified of the tragedy when he was later on disembarking his flight at JFK Airport. His wife Marina had also left him a frantic voicemail, which he would later discover. Lulu and Leo's nanny, Jocelyn, who was still alive after her attempt to take her life, would be taken to a nearby hospital where she underwent emergency surgery. She had cut part of her carotid artery and sliced her thyroid gland. She also had a fractured vertebrae, so she was originally placed into a medically induced coma following her surgery. When 50-year-old Jocelyn Ortega awoke 2 days later, she was handcuffed to her hospital bed. Her hospital bed where she would later be arraigned. At that time, she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to her charges of first-degree and second-degree murder. She would be held without bail and ordered to undergo a psychiatric exam. When she'd awoken, the first thing that Jocelyn had reportedly asked doctors about was her family. She'd done so via a message board, as she couldn't yet speak on her own, since she was still intubated. Now, according to Jocelyn's relatives, they knew that she had been struggling emotionally and financially recently, but they still didn't understand why she had committed such a heinous act. Jocelyn had been born in the Dominican Republic, and as she got older, she, along with family and friends, would travel between there and New York. Eventually, she'd become a U.S. naturalized citizen, and resided along with her family in an apartment in Harlem. Most recently, Jocelyn had been living with her sister, a niece, her friend, and her 17-year-old son, Jesus Frias. Jesus had been raised by Jocelyn's older sister in the Dominican Republic from the time that he was 4 up until the age of 17, at which point he had gone to New York to be reunited with his mother. It seemed to many that Jesus' arrival in the United States in June of 2012 had put significant strain on Jocelyn, mostly financial, as she had chosen to enroll the teen in a private Catholic school. But surely financial stress wouldn't have been enough for a nanny to so viciously attack and kill 2 young children. And come to find out, there certainly was more to the story. Because while many previously thought that Jocelyn had a pleasant working relationship with the Crims, it appeared that she had a different view on things. A detective had interviewed the nanny from her hospital bed, and she told him that she had had a massive fight with Marina the day before the killings. Jocelyn claimed that as she had left the home, Marina had ignored her when she said goodbye, and this made her very, very angry. This wasn't the only thing that had upset Jocelyn, though, as it seemed that the relationship between her and the Krim family had only been getting worse in the weeks leading up to the children's deaths. Jocelyn claimed that Marina had been chastising her for giving junk food to the kids behind her back. And she had also expressed concerns about how Jocelyn was interacting with the 3 young children. The nanny indicated that she had resentment towards Lulu and Leo's parents because they were always telling her exactly what to do. She allegedly even told a detective that Marina knows what happened. While Jocelyn was still being treated in the hospital, she had written on a whiteboard, "I had to do everything and take care of the kids. I worked as a babysitter only, and she wanted me to do everything. She wanted 5 hours of cleaning every week." She made it seem like Marina was a horrible person for making her take care of the children and clean the apartment on top of that. Jocelyn even held up her fingertips to the detective, showing him where she had been burnt from cleaning chemicals. It would later be discovered that Marina had made a special trip to the store to buy organic cleaning supplies to better accommodate Jocelyn's sensitive skin. Now the thing is, Jocelyn had asked Marina, who was paying her $18 an hour at the time, for more money because she was struggling financially. So Marina suggested that she do an extra 5 hours of cleaning of the apartment each week, and she would pay her $100. But apparently this answer did not please Jocelyn because she just wanted more money for the job that she was already doing. She didn't want to have to work more, even complaining that the extra hours would interfere with her doctor's appointments and would relegate her to being the cleaning lady. Relatives and friends of the Crims had always thought that Jocelyn was very close with the family, and it appeared that they treated her well, too. The Crims had paid for her plane ticket to the Dominican Republic so she could visit with her family on one occasion. Another time, they'd accompanied Jocelyn to her home country and had stayed with her family who'd welcomed them with open arms. But the nanny had completely betrayed the family's trust, telling a detective that Lulu, who suffered 30 wounds, including defensive wounds, had fought back when she attacked her. She claimed that 2-year-old Leo, however, had been sleeping when the attack first started. In April of 2016, Yoselin would be offered a plea deal of 30 years to life in prison in exchange for her guilty plea. But she rejected the offer, so instead, in March of 2018, Yoselin would go to trial. When she did, the prosecution stated that she had intentionally and savagely murdered the Krim children because she had resented their mother, Marina. However, her defense was claiming that Yoselin was suffering from chronic mental illness when she had killed the children. While the nanny had no prior arrest record, her lawyer stated that she had a corroborated history of hearing voices and disassociating from reality since she was 16 years old. He also made the claim that Yoselin suffered from depression, psychotic thinking, and hallucinations for much of her life. This statement was backed by Yoselin's family too, who said that she'd been hearing voices since she was a teen, around the time that she had lost someone very close to her. Yoselin's attorney also stated that on more than one occasion, she had seen visions that commanded her to do things, but she had always been guarded in her symptoms and reluctant to seek care. A forensic psychologist who had interviewed Yoselin 3 weeks after her heinous acts said that she had previously experienced episodes of psychosis. She informed the doctor that at the time of the stabbings, her body had been penetrated by the devil, and she was hearing voices who told her, "We're going to kill a lot of people." There were multiple people inside of her talking, she said, male and female. Yoselin also told this doctor, who had been hired by her defense team and interviewed her from her hospital bed, that she didn't know if she wanted to live or die. Additionally, the defense stated that at this time, Yoselin couldn't fathom why she was handcuffed to a hospital bed and didn't know what day or year it was. The thing is, prior to standing trial, the nanny had been interviewed by 2 other psychiatrists who had found her mentally competent. So the prosecution maintained that she had intentionally killed Lulu and Leo. She hadn't been in a psychosis or hearing voices, but rather, her actions showed that she had been planning this prior to. Yoselin not only left her cell phone behind at her own apartment that morning, but she had also taped several important documents to her doorknob. Like she was putting things in order, preparing to kill Lulu and Leo, then herself. Additionally, Yoselin had asked the doorman if Marina was home yet, making sure that the mother would not walk in on what she was about to do. After she and the children had gone up to the apartment, Yoselin grabbed 2 knives from the kitchen before bringing Lulu and Leo into the bathroom where she attacked them. She'd slit their throats to keep them from screaming as she ended their lives. Then, the nanny waited until the unsuspecting Marina arrived home, and she tried to end her own life in front of the mother. Like she sickly wanted to see what Marina's reaction would be to her 2 dead children. The prosecution told the jury that rather than the defense's theory of mental illness, Yoselin resented Marina for being the mother that she could not be, and for providing for her children what she could not for hers. As soon as Yoselin's son had come to New York, her stress and anxiety had mounted, and the financial strain of her son's private tuition heavily weighed on her. In recent months, she had even been forced to move out of her apartment and back into the one with her sister. Several witnesses reported that in the months leading up to the crimes, Yoselin had reported hearing a black man's voice, and she often cried, asking for help and prayers. Some of Yoselin's neighbors had noticed a change in her too. She began losing weight, was unhappy, nervous, and agitated. Yoselin had also frequently been selling things on the side in an attempt to earn money any way she could. Yoselin's son Jesus testified during the trial, and he said that he had not noticed some of the things that the neighbors and his other family members had noticed. But he had noticed that on the morning of Lulu and Leo's murders, his mother seemed rather sad and depressed, though she had sent him off to school as normal. Just days before the killings, Yoselin had gone to a psychiatrist appointment. At that appointment, her and her doctor spoke about feelings of stress, anxiety, feelings of failure, and her relationship with her son. According to the doctor, Yoselin did not show any signs of wanting to hurt herself or anyone else. It should also be noted that this appointment was the first time that Yoselin had any contact with a mental health professional in 30 years. The prosecution brought up the fact that Marina Krim had gone out of her way to help Yoselin, whom she knew was struggling financially. She had offered her the extra hours and money cleaning her apartment. But little did she know, this had enraged the nanny, who was overwhelmed by her financial situation and had begun to blame the Krims. There was no denying that the family had tried to do right by Yoselin, though. They would sometimes even pay her son Jesus to walk their dog or to dog sit while they were out of town. Something that Yoselin had never thanked the family for. They had even gifted her 17-year-old son Jesus an iPad once. On top of that, the Krims would hire the nanny's other family members when they were in need of extra help. And Marina had recommended Yoselin's nanny services to family and friends to try to help her make some extra money on the side. It also came to light during the trial that Yoselin's family had helped her to fraudulently secure the childcare position with the Krims. When Marina had asked Yoselin for work references, she had provided her with a woman whom she had worked for 3 months. She also gave her another reference, a woman whom she claimed to have worked for 2 years, caring for her toddler son. But this second woman actually had no children, and she was Yoselin's niece. During the trial, Lulu and Leo's mother, Marina, would testify. She described the awful day that she had found both of her children dead, and she said, "It's like a horror movie. I go down, I walk down the hall, and I see the light on under the back of the door, and I'm like, oh God, it's so quiet in here. Oh God, why is it so quiet? And I open the door, oh God." Marina began sobbing. Then the mother described her reaction to the bloody scene, saying, "It was a scream you can't even imagine is inside of you. I don't even know where it came from. I just thought, I'm never going to be able to talk to them ever again. They are dead. I just saw my kids dead." Marina would go on to testify that in the days leading up to the murder of her children, she had caught Yoselin staring at her in a rather creepy way. Then there was another incident that had happened weeks before the children were killed. Marina had told Yoselin that she was pregnant for the 4th time. The nanny congratulated her, telling the mother-to-be that she was so happy and that she loved her. But then the pregnancy had unfortunately ended in a miscarriage, and when it did, Yoselin's reaction was much different. This time, she didn't say anything, not giving Marina much emotion at all. It was like she was mad at her. After that, Marina claimed that Yoselin seemed more arrogant. The mother stated, "She had that smug look on her, like she does right now. It's disgusting." Then from the stand, she would lash out at Yoselin, saying, "You're evil and you like this. You're getting pleasure." When Marina was asked if she had ever seen any signs of serious mental illness or if Yoselin's family had ever gone to her with their concerns, she angrily yelled, "Never," into the microphone. As she later left the silent courtroom, Marina yelled back to Yoselin, "You're gross. You're disgusting." The former doorman at the Krims' apartment would additionally testify during the trial. He remembered that Yoselin had not said a single word to him in the entire 2 years that she worked for the family. But on the day of the murders, she had come home with the children around 3:30 and asked if Marina was upstairs yet. Like she already had her plan set into motion. Yoselin's older sister, Miladies Garcia, testified as well, and she told the court that her sister loved the Krim children, like they were her own. Then she spoke about a bizarre phone call from Yoselin about 5 hours prior to the stabbings. She stated that while her sister didn't say much on the phone call, she could hear Yoselin gnashing her teeth, and she knew that something was wrong. Miladies, who lives in the Dominican Republic, said that in the past she had told her sister to go to a therapist or a priest, but said that after that she had never followed up with any family members in New York to see how Yoselin was doing. When asked why she didn't call and warn her sister's bosses, Marina and Kevin Krim, unbelievably, the sister said that it was their fault for not seeing how troubled Yoselin was, suggesting that if they had given her some time off, it may have prevented the murders. Regardless of the narrative that the defense was trying to push, that Yoselin was insane, thankfully in the end, the jurors came back with a unanimous guilty verdict. Prior to her sentencing, Yoselin was given the opportunity to speak. And when she did, it was all about her, not about the lives that she had destroyed.
I'm very sorry for everything that happened. But I hope that no one goes through what I have gone through. Although many people wish me all the worst, my life is in the hands of God. I am in jail. But perhaps there are many more that are more in prison than I am. I ask for a great deal of forgiveness to God, to Marina, to Kevin. I wish my family, I told my family that I did not feel well. At one time when I was walking, I had Lulu. I told Lulu, I don't feel good. And she would say, what's wrong? I have to go to the doctor. I went to the doctor. He gave me another appointment. He said, if you don't come, they're going to charge you $10. I told Marina, I didn't tell her that it was through the doctor, but I told her I had an appointment. But she had another appointment, and I was not able to go. I really feel it deep in my soul. And to the DA, may God bless him for everything he wishes me. And everything he has done, but God is up there.
She was then sentenced to life behind bars without the possibility of parole. As the judge was handing down her sentence, he called Yoselin pure evil, then blamed her family for not helping her seek medical treatment for her anxiety and depression, and for hiding her conditions from the Crims. The children's mother, Marina, would give a tearful victim impact statement in which she would say in part,
Family and I, we create and build. The defendant may think she destroyed Lulu and Leo, but she is a failure in this too. Lulu and Leo are powerful forces. There are two stars now that will always lead us forward. Thank you.
Lulu and Leo's father, Kevin, additionally spoke in court.
And more importantly, it is right that she will go from being hated by the world to being forgotten by the world before she's even dead. While Lulu and Leo's siblings and legions of family and friends, even friends who never knew them, will never forget their inspiring legacies. In my best moments, I feel Lulu and Leo inspiring me and carrying me forward. In my most difficult moments, I try to ask myself what Lulu and Leo would choose to do. It's the best beacon of hope, the best guidance most of us could ever hope to have. Thank you.
Following the deaths of their two children, Kevin and Marina Krim set up the Lulu and Leo Fund, which is a nonprofit charity that provides creative education programs for disadvantaged children. The couple has since gone on to have two more children together, named Felix and Linus. In June of 2018, the New York State Senate passed Lulu and Leo's Law, which is the first of its kind law in the U.S., making it a crime to knowingly and materially misrepresent, the qualifications of a person applying for work as a child caregiver. Almost immediately after Lulu and Leo were so viciously murdered, a memorial for the two beautiful, sweet children began to grow outside the family's apartment building. A memorial service for 6-year-old Lucia Krim and her 2-year-old brother Leo Krim was later held on November 5, 2012, at Avery Fisher Hall in Manhattan. Well, thank you for listening to Lucia and Leo's story today. This is so shocking and disturbing. The Krims trusted Jocelyn. She had been working for them for 2 years at that point. And they seem to have welcomed her and even her son into their family. And they tried to help her in any way they could to make extra money because they knew that she was struggling financially. But in the end, Jocelyn blamed the Krims for all her problems and took her rage out on little Lulu and Leo, forever breaking the hearts of the children's other family members.
He's deceived everyone in his life with ease. And he's betrayed all of us with his actions. Before parole board in 25 years from now, he may seem remorseful, he may beg and plead to be released, he may claim to be changed. Please don't be fooled. He's a monster. And I truly do believe he'll kill again if given the chance.
Maddox Mary Lawrence was born on April 24, 2014, in Syracuse, New York, to her mother, Morgan Lawrence, and her father, Ryan Lawrence. Maddox was an only child who was happy and full of energy. She was also said to have the best laugh, and she was constantly just full of giggles. Maddox's parents, Ryan and Morgan, had met while they had been working for a tea store located inside the Destiny Mall in Syracuse. And at that same time, Morgan was also holding down jobs at 2 clothing stores, one of them being Francesca's. The couple was inseparable and they fell in love quickly. And not long into them dating, Morgan became pregnant with Maddox. And soon after, Ryan and Morgan got married. The family lived in a rented home on the 1000th block of Valley Drive in Syracuse. And due to tight finances, they only had 1 car to share between the two of them. When Maddox was born in 2014, the couple was over the moon. They were thrilled to be new parents, and Maddox was happy and healthy. But then, shortly before Maddox's first birthday, her parents noticed that her dark brown eyes were getting even darker. Worried and thinking this was rather unusual, they brought her into the doctors. There, unfortunately, Maddox would be diagnosed with retina cancer. It's actually a rare form of eye cancer called retinoblastoma. After getting the diagnosis, for months, both Ryan and Morgan drove their daughter to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, where she underwent hours-long chemotherapy treatments targeted directly at the tumor. These treatments could last as long as 6 hours each time. Now, in addition to the couple not bringing in a lot of money, they were also taking time off of work and paying for Maddox's expensive cancer treatments. So along with the stress of their little girl having cancer, their financial problems added even more stress onto both of their shoulders. In order to help ease the situation, Maddox's parents would end up opening a GoFundMe to help pay for her medical bills, and they would raise over $9,000. On February 20th, 2016, Morgan was scheduled to work at her job at Francesca's at the mall. Since they only had 1 car, Ryan and Maddox dropped Morgan off for her shift around 4 p.m. They were supposed to come back later around 10 p.m. to pick her up once her shift was over. However, that never happened. Instead, right before her shift ended, Morgan received a text message from Ryan saying that he had left the car in the parking lot with the keys in it and she could drive herself home. Confused, Morgan walked out to her car, and there she noticed that her husband, Ryan, also left her a video message, and in it, he indicated he might hurt himself and their baby girl. Morgan freaked out and called 911. She told them the situation, and a missing persons alert as well as an Amber Alert was issued the very next morning on February 21st. The Amber Alert also described Ryan as being emotionally unstable and said that he had a history of mental illness. Syracuse police had actually been called to deal with Ryan multiple times in the year leading up to Maddox's murder. And details of these encounters is what had alerted state police to his possible mental illness. Ryan was actually diagnosed with bipolar and antisocial personality disorder. Police began searching the inner harbor of Syracuse, as well as Baldwinville, which is where Ryan had grown up. Little was known about where Ryan and Maddox may have been, or their mode of transportation. So for the next couple of days, highway signs and televisions flashed the Amber Alert looking for Maddox. Police were out searching high and low for the father and daughter, leaving no stone unturned. Helicopters were searching along the Seneca River and Highway 690, while other officers searched Whiskey Hollow Road, which is a seasonal road in the town of Memphis, and also near the Tri-County Mall. During all of this, the toddler's mother, Morgan, would make a publicly broadcasted plea to her husband, Ryan, saying,
If you're listening, please just bring Maddox home. Maddox, I love you, honey. Ryan, please call. We just want to know that the both of you are safe. The whole family loves you. The whole family wants you both home. And we just want to know that you guys are in a good place. And we'd love to see you both as soon as possible.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. I'll take some questions if you have them.
Then, 2 days after they had originally gone missing, on February 22nd, authorities received a phone call saying that Ryan had been spotted at a store called Thrifty Shopper on Downer Street in Baldwinsville, New York. A former employee who had happened to be in the store at the time had spotted Ryan and at first thought he was just some homeless man. He smelled strongly of firewood and seemed to be in a hurry, which had drawn her attention to him. But when the ex-employee looked a little bit closer, she realized that she recognized this man. That was regardless of the long black wig he was wearing, as well as the knit cap, sunglasses, and bandana. The ex-employee had recognized Ryan as being the person from the missing persons alert that police had issued, so she contacted authorities. Immediately after they received this tip, police rushed down to where Ryan had been spotted, and they found him walking on a nearby street. As they tried to stop Ryan to speak with him, he told them that he was just headed to a nearby soup kitchen. He was, however, apprehended at that time and brought in. And unbeknownst to police, Maddox had already been dead for about 2 days at this point. Now, when authorities had picked up Ryan, upon asking him what his name was, he had given them the fake name of Roll Rivers. He also gave them a fake birthday. Police called Ryan out on the fact that his name and birthday didn't match, and then one of the officers reached over and pulled the wig off of Ryan's head. At that point, Ryan just said, "You got me." But when the police officer asked Ryan where his daughter Maddox could be found, he gave a very unsettling answer and said, "She's in a better place." And that was it. At the time of his arrest, Ryan had on him a backpack which contained a book called 100 Deadly Skills, which is described in a book review as a hands-on practical survival guide from a retired Navy SEAL, adapted for civilians from actual Special Forces operations, to elude pursuers, evade capture, and survive any dangerous situation. Ryan also had a handcuff key and a camping stove on him. And in addition to lying about his name, Ryan had also lied to police and told them that he had given his daughter Maddox to a couple named Chris and Tyler. He claimed he had met this couple at the Syracuse Real Food Co-op. And he would stick to the story for hours, though the details did begin to change. Tyler soon became Taylor, and Ryan also told police that they had taken his daughter to Bolivia or Mexico or some other place. He couldn't quite get that straight. Syracuse police detectives questioned Ryan all night, and it wasn't until early the next morning that Ryan finally agreed to take them to the places he had gone on the day Maddox went missing. And later that morning, while he was showing an officer the places that he had traveled to, Ryan also made a confession while in the back of the police cruiser. He said to the officer, "You won't look at me the same way once I tell you what I did to her body." And upon Ryan's return back to the police station, he gave a 40-minute confession and then signed a police statement of his confession. Now that Ryan had told police officers where they could find Maddox's body, they began searching Syracuse's Inner Harbor, which is an inlet off the end of Onondaga Lake. And only a couple hours later, state police divers found a body underwater along the creek walk, a biking and hiking path. It was the body of 22-month-old Maddox Lawrence, which had been pulled from the water around noon on February 23rd. Ryan was charged with second-degree murder the same afternoon. However, the charges would be enhanced to first-degree murder and kidnapping a month later on March 23rd. He pled not guilty and was held without bail. Come to find out, Maddox had been killed not very long after she and her father had dropped Morgan off for work that day. After they had dropped her off, Ryan then drove with Maddox down Interstate 81 towards Tinker Falls. It's a secluded waterfall that's popular in the warmer months. There's also a park surrounding it, where Ryan would bring Maddox. Once they were in the park, Ryan took a wooden baseball bat and beat Maddox in the head until she died. He also told detectives that prior to killing his daughter, he had prayed and said, "God, if I'm not meant to kill her, make her stumble." After he had killed her, Ryan then burned Maddox's body in a fire pit for 3 hours, and then took her body back out and placed it into his car. He had then driven to the creek where she would eventually be found. There, he tied her body to a cinder block and dropped her into the water. Ryan's plan was to make everyone think that Maddox had simply run away. He killed his daughter and then was going to run far off so he could kill himself, he said. And the reason he had all the survival gear on him when police found him was because he said he needed to make it to the Ohio River prior to killing himself. He hoped that if he made it there, his body could wash all the way down to the Caribbean. That's where his mother's ashes had been disposed of in 2008. Yet chances are a body, an entire adult body, is not going to get all the way down the Ohio River into the Caribbean without a single person seeing it. So, either a lie or a terrible plan. Ryan's mother, Mary Lawrence, had died of kidney cancer in 2008. And ironically, Mary had been the director of the Victims Advocate Program at the Onondaga County District Attorney's Office. And she had held this position for 10 years after her brother had been murdered in 1990. So Ryan's explanation for killing Maddox varied, but one of the explanations that he gave was that he didn't want her to grow up without a father, and at that point, he had already determined that he was going to kill himself. He said at first he had thought about just running away with her and letting her live, but then he said he realized he didn't want his daughter to grow up without a mother, so that's when he decided to kill her. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Before killing his daughter, Ryan had even tried to build his own kayak out of cardboard and plastic wrap. This, however, he had deemed to be not seaworthy for some reason, so that plan had been abandoned. Ryan would also later tell a psychiatrist that the reason he had burned his daughter's body was because he thought it increased his chances of not getting caught. And if he went to prison, he knew that he wouldn't be able to kill himself in the way he wanted. After the murder, Ryan dropped off the family car at the Destiny USA Mall for Morgan to drive herself home. He also left the video message at this time, and in it he said, "Morgan, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. I want you to have the life you deserve." He then told her that he had taken Maddox with him, but he said nothing about the fact that he had already killed his daughter at that point. And after leaving the car in the parking lot, Ryan had then walked to Baldwinsville, where he had hoped to find a boat. Ryan claimed he eventually planned on committing suicide or just dying due to starvation or infection. But I seriously doubt it. It sounds like he just wanted to take off in a boat and get away with the murder. The odd thing was that Ryan had always seemed like a loving father. When he did morning pastry deliveries for the cafe that him and Morgan both worked for, he would never leave Maddox in the car. Even if it was just for a quick delivery, he would always take her out and bring her in with him. The father had actually done everything he could to make sure his daughter was happy and safe. That is, up until February 20th. A little while after Ryan had been arrested, his defense team made the claim that the confession their client had given to authorities after his arrest had not been legally obtained. And at a hearing that was held to determine if Ryan's confession could be used as evidence, Ryan testified that he had wanted to stop talking to police hours into his interrogation, but they had just kept pushing him. The detective who had questioned Ryan said otherwise, however. He said that Ryan had been actively engaged in the conversation the entire time, and he had been the one that was willing to take them to where Maddox's body was. It wouldn't matter in the end, though, because Ryan would take a plea deal that Maddox's family had agreed to, and on September 15th, 2016, Ryan pled guilty to first-degree murder. He was then sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. During Ryan's sentencing hearing, he admitted to beating his 1-year-old daughter to death as tears streamed down his face. Ryan's lawyer said that his client was just devastated for what he had done, and at this point, he would do anything to take it back. It was theorized that Ryan had actually been jealous due to all the attention that Maddox was getting because of her cancer diagnosis, compared to the attention that he was not getting, though this theory was never confirmed by Ryan or his defense team. Ryan would also later say that at the time of his daughter's murder, he had been suffering from a psychotic disorder which had been brought on by a number of problems that he did not think he could solve. He was working at a dead-end job as a gas station attendant. He had a suspended driver's license and a $1,000 fine that he didn't have the money to pay. His car was also uninspected, his marriage was falling apart, and 8 years later, he was still very much grieving his mother's death. The day before Ryan murdered Maddox, he had actually brought her to the same exact spot with intentions of killing her then. However, he decided he couldn't go through with it. But he had then gone back the next day, so he had a lot of time to think it through and decide, maybe I shouldn't do this. But he did it anyways. So there was serious premeditation. A psychiatrist that had been hired by the defense found that Ryan was suffering from an extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the murder. He had symptoms of non-psychotic mental illness. The psychiatrist also said that Ryan had told him that his dead mother had been the one that spoke to him and told him to let her take care of Maddox, and that was why he killed her. But Ryan's family doesn't believe for a second that he ever heard voices. In addition, Ryan also told this psychiatrist that he had been a heavy drug user from the age of 16 to 20. He had used LSD, cocaine, mushrooms, marijuana, ketamine, and ecstasy. However, he said he hadn't used any drugs in the week prior to his daughter's murder. On top of all of this, Ryan also told the psychiatrist that he had stolen from every single job that he ever had, and he had been caught by at least one of the employers and fired. The families of both Ryan Lawrence and Morgan Lawrence would give statements in court explaining how hurt they were and still are because of Ryan's actions. The first to speak was Maddox's aunt and then uncle. Her uncle, Richard Lawrence, Ryan's brother, said that the brother he once knew is now dead. He then said, "Maddox is the victim and you, my brother, are to blame. You are a stranger and also a murderer." And rather than being there for a murderer, like I've seen so many family members do when telling these stories, instead, Rich supported Morgan every step of the way while they got justice for Maddox. Rich Lawrence would also say that his brother Ryan lacked direction, was selfish, was a slacker, never took responsibility well, and never took authority well either. But he was generally good-hearted, he said. That's probably the only good thing you could say about him from the sounds of it. And later on in Ryan's sentencing, Morgan Lawrence's parents, Maddox's grandparents, went to the stand to speak about how much losing their granddaughter had affected them. The heartbroken grandfather spoke about all the milestones that he will now miss in his granddaughter Maddox's life. He said, "I will miss out on her attending preschool. I won't be able to take a picture of her on the steps of the school bus for her first day of kindergarten. I won't hear her recite the alphabet or count to 100. Then Morgan, Maddox's mother, went on to speak directly to her ex-husband Ryan.
Okay. His completely irrational actions have left me with no answers or closure. Ryan has not only taken my daughter away, but also abandoned me as well, leaving me with feelings of extreme loneliness and sadness. This situation also leaves me questioning my own judgment of others' intentions and their character. Burying my daughter alone was the single most howling experience I've ever endured. Knowing that her death was at the hands of a man that I once loved and trusted with our lives shakes me to the core. Because of what Ryan has done, I can never again be sure that I know someone for who they truly are. Ryan Lawrence's actions have affected the lives of others as well. Maddox was loved by everyone she met. She was strong and inspiring. She's missed greatly by everyone who knew her. And those who are very close to her, such as our family, are heartbroken and outraged. I want her to be known for who she was, and I want to be known for the loving mom and wife that I truly was. As a result of Ryan's actions, I need for him to spend the rest of his lifetime in prison. I fear for my safety, and I fear for the safety of others who are released back into the community. He's deceived everyone in his life with ease. And he's betrayed all of us with his actions. He's charismatic and believable when he wants to manipulate a situation in his favor. Before a parole board in 25 years from now, he may seem remorseful, he may beg and plead to be released, he may claim to be changed. Please don't be fooled. He's a monster. And I truly do believe he'll kill again if given the chance. Don't give him that chance. This is the most horrible thing I've ever endured in my life. But I want you to know, you will not drag me down. I will rise above this and honor my daughter with my own life. You took Maddox's only chance at life, Ryan. And therefore, you don't deserve another chance at your own.
Ryan was also given the chance to speak before his sentence was handed down. He accepted blame for his actions and told the courtroom how he loved his daughter.
It's incredibly hard to talk about this for many reasons, and even harder to find the words to explain such a horrible crime. It's with all of my heart that I convey my sincerest apology to everyone for taking Maddox from her family and everyone who loved her. I'm also utterly sorry for denying Maddox her chance at life. I can't expect your forgiveness, but I tell you now that the sorrow I feel for what I've done is complete and comes from the deepest depths of my being. This sorrow I feel has nothing to do with being in jail, but for the pain, for the loss of Maddox. I miss her so bad. Max is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'd say that to her all the time, and to anyone else who'd listen. It was amazing to have her everywhere I went, including all the times I brought her to work with me. When our baby was diagnosed with cancer, we were in shock, but hopeful that the doctors in New York City would cure her, as indeed they did. Even after enduring countless overnight trips to the hospital and fruitless attempts at soothing a baby who couldn't possibly understand why she couldn't eat for hours before invasive treatment procedures, the threat of her cancer returning was very real. Our work schedules were arranged so that one of us was always with the baby, but there was very little time for the three of us together, nor enough money for a sitter or much of anything else. Still, we treated her and fed her better than we did ourselves, and loved her far more than anything else we've ever known. In no way can I justify my actions, and there is no one to blame but myself. There is no good explanation for such a horrendous crime, and regret is too simple a term to describe what I feel. What I can say is I've never felt such strong emotions towards anything in my life than my ever-growing and unconditional love for Maddox, and now I'm completely distraught by overwhelming grief and anguish for what I've done. I was never jealous of my daughter. Both our families know I love Maddox. If anything, I only wanted more for her. Max was always at the top of my list, and is constantly, to this day, the focal point of my thoughts and actions since she first came into my life. I'll never overcome this feeling of loss, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how I got to such a dark, irrational state. She was my life's purpose, and making her happy was my job. Such strong feelings of love, however, brought equally strong feelings of fear and uncertainty when it came to my responsibility for her happiness. Although I blame no one else for my acts, as the pressures to give her the perfect life built up, I also struggled against relentless waves of negative emotions every day, bearing witness to the pain and sadness in many of my wife and daughter's interactions. Yet no reason and no psychological diagnosis seemed plausible to me to have made me commit this act against my very nature, taking the one thing I love most. This Easter, my father, weeping, asked me what I was thinking. In despair, I gave him the only answer I could. I don't know. Although these pressures led me to this unthinkable act, I cannot now make sense of what I did. There's no valid reason for why our daughter Maddox had to die. Not a second goes by when I don't wish I could take back what I did, and that Maddox would still be alive. I pray all the time that she's in a better place and that God and my mother are watching over her. To Morgan and all of those who loved her, I hope that from my plea and acceptance of responsibility, you can find at least some measure of closure from the pain I inflicted. This was, and is, without question, the worst act I will ever commit. I recognize that no one but myself can be blamed for this atrocity, and I will always be traumatized knowing I'm responsible for such incomprehensible actions. Although I accept this punishment, nothing can be worse. Nothing can be worse than my own despair at the loss of Maddox, and I regret that I'm not alone in that feeling. I love my daughter with all my heart. The only thing that can match my love and loss of her now is the dreadful pain and remorse I feel for committing such a terribly terrible crime. I'm sorry. I know I can never be sorry enough.
And the judge would say to Ryan,
"There is no term for a parent who loses a child. That's how awful it is. I say this to you in order to describe to everyone, in some small way, the scope and breadth and devastating result of your callous and selfish and horrific acts in taking Maddox's life. You had no right to decide when she should die. And what you did not kill was the love in the hearts of so many relatives and friends. That love in their hearts will live forever."
Ryan Lawrence is currently being held in the Sing Song Correctional Facility, which is a maximum security prison about 30 miles north of New York City. Beginning the same day that Maddox's body had been found, people began placing vibrant flowers, stuffed animals, and candles along the creek walk as a memorial to the toddler. The mementos were placed right below the crime scene tape, separating the walkway from the devastating scene where the baby girl's body had been pulled from the water. And a memorial also popped up in front of Maddox's home on the 1000th block of Valley Drive in Syracuse. A sense of deep sadness had taken over the neighborhood. Those who had heard the heartbreaking news had started to leave balloons and candles, and a drawing left at the home said on it, "Rest peacefully, baby Maddox." A private funeral was later held for Maddox Lawrence. Well, thank you for listening to all of Maddox's story today. This just doesn't make sense to me. Ryan was fighting to keep his daughter alive for months on end, and then one day he just decided to kill her? I don't understand why, and none of his excuses seem to be making any sense. Though, is there really ever a reason for killing an innocent child that would make sense? Olivia Lynn Stripling was born on October 27, 2019, to her mother, Cody Ann Lyon, in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The little girl was said to be happy, sweet, and bright, and she also had 4 older siblings. It's unclear whether Olivia's mother, Cody, actually had a job or not, but nonetheless, starting in April of 2021, she hired a woman named Melissa Bradley to begin watching Olivia. According to the new sitter, Melissa, the first time that she watched the little girl, she would end up calling Child Protective Services. This was because she noticed that Olivia had multiple bruises on her face and body. She also had bite marks on her and a huge bulge on her head. Every time Melissa saw the little girl after that, she just looked worse and worse. So the babysitter had begun documenting all of Olivia's injuries, and then she would send them over to Child Protective Services. However, the caseworker that Melissa had sent these photos to would never follow back up with her. But according to Child Protective Services, they had looked into the case. Olivia was taken to the emergency room where doctors checked her over. However, there was no signs of trauma found. Therefore, Child Services had closed out the case, stating that there was no signs of abuse or neglect. Melissa said that she also contacted police in regards to Olivia's injuries, but they also did not follow up with her. After that, she didn't know where to go. She was lost on what to do to further try to protect little Olivia. Additionally, there were allegations made of Olivia being SA'd while in her mother's care. Shortly after the babysitter contacted Child Services, Olivia's mother, Cody, found out that she had done so. As soon as she realized that Melissa had been the one who reported her, she called her out on social media saying, "Melissa Bradley, I'm calling you out. Make sure you get the right info when you say my baby's being touched." Now, when Melissa had confronted the mother about why Olivia had all these injuries on her body, she had been given a number of different excuses, including that the girl's older brother had been playing with her too rough and had hurt her. But this wasn't the first time that Child Services had been called on Cody. They had been called in regards to her children in the past as well. Back in 2011, Cody had been arrested and a case was opened against her after she'd been caught driving recklessly with one of her daughters in the car. She was later convicted in relation to this incident, however, just on a charge of resisting arrest. Cody's defense was that a friend of hers had her child taken away when she had been pulled over, so she feared that the same thing would happen to her. But instead of cooperating with authorities to make sure that didn't happen, she resisted, making the situation much worse. Makes sense. Her children had not been taken away following this. They would, however, be taken away from Cody years later in 2017. After she was arrested for having meth and other drugs in the home with her 3 children. They would, however, later be returned back to her. Then in January of 2021, Child Services were called yet again. This was just a few months before Melissa had called and reported Olivia's injuries. The January report stated that Olivia and her siblings were in a home with very poor living conditions. And at that time, for whatever senseless reason, Cody's other children were removed from her custody, but Olivia was not. There was additionally a social media post from 2013 that was written by one of Cody's friends, in which she says that Cody was not capable of properly supporting her kids. She then threatened to call CPS on her. And just looking at Cody's various social media accounts and posts, it seems pretty clear that she was not fit to be a mother. Now, regardless of Cody calling out the babysitter, Melissa, for reporting her to Child Services, the mother still apparently needed someone to watch 21-month-old Olivia. So on August 7th, 2021, she once again called Melissa. The babysitter agreed to watch the little girl, and she headed to Cody's apartment on Bluebird Court in Portage, Michigan. The plan was for Melissa to pick up Olivia, then drive her back to her place in order to babysit her overnight. But when Melissa arrived at Cody's apartment, she noticed that Olivia's head was swollen, very swollen. The little girl was lying in bed with her mother, Cody, and she was still sleeping. Then, on the car ride back to Melissa's place, she would notice that Olivia didn't want to eat any of the food that she'd been offered. Just moments after Melissa arrived back at her place with the toddler, less than 30 minutes after she had picked her up from Cody's, Olivia fell to the floor and began having a seizure. Then, she fell unconscious, so Melissa immediately called 911. When paramedics arrived at the apartment, they found the babysitter performing CPR on the little girl. Olivia would then be rushed to a hospital and placed on life support. However, she would die the following day, on August 8, 2021, after suffering a significant skull fracture that led to brain bleed. Her death would later be ruled as a homicide. But there would not be any arrests made in connection with her death for quite some time. It wasn't until over a year later, in December of 2022, that her mother, Cody Lyon, would be arrested and charged with second-degree murder and CA. She was held on a measly $50,000 bond. According to state police, it had taken them so long to make an arrest because they had to wait on additional follow-up and lab analysis. But that seems like a ridiculously long time to wait for all of that. Especially since the little girl's mother had already previously told investigators that it was her who had accidentally kicked Olivia when the little girl had crawled up in her bed while Cody was trying to sleep. Olivia had then fallen off the bed and hit her head on an end table. And even though the mother said that it was just an accident, Cody also admitted that she was frustrated from a lack of sleep due to being up for days on a bender using methamphetamine. And she was upset that the kids just would not let her sleep. Because, they're kids and they need things. Weird, huh? Detectives had also interviewed Cody's boyfriend at the time, who said that Cody had admitted to him that she kicked her daughter. Then, Cody's older daughter would tell authorities that her mother often got angry with the kids, and she felt like it was mostly the drugs that made her so frequently do so. Now, in the time that Cody was free, between the time that Olivia had died in August of 2021 and the time that she was arrested in December of 2022, she had been actively posting on her Facebook page, talking about how much she loved and missed her daughter and wanted justice for her. During this year and a half where she was still a free woman, Cody also had time to get a new boyfriend. Then, just a few months before her arrest in October, she had put up a post on her social media asking if anyone knew of a good criminal defense attorney who was willing to take on a case that was going to go national, pro bono. So she knew something was coming. Speaking publicly, Melissa's babysitter would say, "CPS obviously did not do their job. It's messed up. I lost someone I considered my daughter." In January of 2024, just 4 days before her case was set to go to trial, 32-year-old Cody Lyon pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter in connection with Olivia's death. A few weeks later, she was sentenced to serve between 22 months and 15 years in prison, with credit for her 430 days already served. This pathetic sentence is even though a judge had previously said in court about Olivia, this child was not killed in one day. This child was treated savagely and brutally based on the injuries I've seen. And also despite an officer at the sheriff's department saying, "In all of my years of public service, which has been a long time, I would just like the court to know, this is probably one of the most heinous scenes I've been on, to see what had been done to that child. This is a story that will haunt us for a long time. I can assure you of that." But apparently the judge thought that just 22 months to 15 years was appropriate. When Cody was given a chance to speak at her sentencing, she didn't specifically address any remorse surrounding her daughter's death, but she said that it was a blessing for her to get locked up so she could clean up her life. Then, in December of 2024, just months later, Cody was paroled, so she's once again a free woman. She does have a long list of conditions that she is to follow, including that she can't leave the state, she must maintain a job, she can't own any weapons or firearms, and she will be tested for drugs and alcohol. However, come December of 2026, Cody will be free from all these terms and conditions of her parole. Well, thank you for listening to Olivia's story today. Here's yet another case where the child did not get justice. Olivia's mother barely served any time behind bars for killing her daughter. And while I understand that her death was not intentional, Cody still kicked her daughter hard enough to make her fall off the bed. What kind of mother does that? Not to mention that this little girl had clearly been going through months of mistreatment prior to her untimely death. And now Cody is free again and can go on to have more babies if she'd like.
A winner of a Food Network competition show is now accused of killing her adopted child. Authorities in South Carolina say 29-year-old Ariel Robinson and her husband, 34-year-old Jerry, were arrested in connection with the death of 3-year-old Victoria Rose Smith.
Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. So if you haven't checked out A Wicked World on Patreon yet, and you want to have access to over 50 exclusive videos with new ones being added each and every month, then make sure you do that now using the link in the description box below. The story I have for you today is about a little girl who was placed into a foster home, a home that was supposed to be better than the one that she was taken from. Unfortunately, that was far from the truth. This is the story of Victoria Smith. Victoria, or Tori, Rose Smith was born on March 27, 2017, in South Carolina, to her mother, Cassie Fairs, and her father, Bradley David Smith. She was a happy and easygoing little girl who loved going to the playground, baby dolls, the color pink, eating cupcakes, and playing with her two big brothers. Victoria's mother, Cassie, was said to have tested positive for marijuana while she was pregnant with her daughter. And then, once the little girl was born, she also tested positive for the drug. This placed the newly single mother on Child Services' radar. And while the family was still being monitored, one day Cassie fell asleep while watching her kids. She said that she had been up all night with Victoria, who was still just a newborn, and during this time, her two sons ran next door to a neighbor's house, who then called the police. The mother was also struggling financially, and having difficulties finding housing for her family, which only made her situation look worse to Child Services. So eventually, social workers would convince Cassie to sign over custody of her 3 children, and they would then be placed into foster care. Their mother insists that there was never any type of abuse while Victoria and her brothers were in her custody. According to her, Child Services made her feel like the children were going to a good home with a loving family, and she figured they would have better, happier lives there. For a while, this did seem to be the case too, because during the last visit that Cassie had with her kids, they were happy, healthy, and thriving. Then, in March of 2020, Victoria and her brothers were placed into a new foster home with Ariel and Jerry Austin Robinson. The couple, who already had 2 kids of their own, intended on adopting the 3 children. The Robinson family was very excited about adding to their family too, even making the happy announcement in a Christmas social media post. Now, Victoria's new foster mom, Ariel, was actually a bit of a celebrity. She'd previously been the $25,000 winner of Season 20 of Food Network's Worst Cooks in America show.
And the winner of Worst Cooks in America is... Harry!
Oh my God!
When Victoria and her brothers first arrived at their new home, she had actually just gotten back from filming the show 2 weeks prior. According to Ariel's personal website, arifunny.com, she was a middle school teacher who was trying to make it as a stand-up comic, radio host, and TV personality. The children's new foster family lived in Selwood Circle, Simpsonville, South Carolina. And once they moved in, things seemed to be going well for a time. Ariel would even often post pictures of the children and her new, bigger blended family on social media. They seemed happy. The foster mother even described her relationship with little Victoria as being perfect. And her husband, Jerry, said that he felt like he was just a big teddy bear to the toddler. But that didn't last very long, because on the afternoon of January 14th, 2021, 911 was called to the home.
Greenville County 911, what's the location of the emergency? You have an emergency. Our daughter is unresponsive. She's drunk a lot of water. We're trying to pump, CPR to get out.
Tell me exactly what happened.
Our 3-year-old daughter's choking on water right now.
Your 3-year-old daughter is what?
Choking on water right now. We need help immediately.
Okay, we'll get help on the way.
When first responders arrived on the scene, they found little Victoria lying on the floor of her bedroom, not breathing. And she was rushed to Greenville Memorial Hospital, but sadly would be pronounced dead later that day. When paramedics asked Ariel what had happened to the little girl, she had a similar story to her husband, saying that she had been drinking large amounts of water before she suddenly went limp. But due to the severity of her injuries, first responders suspected that there was CA going on in the home, and so authorities were called in. Victoria's body had masses of black and purple bruises all over it. They were all along her right side, down both her legs, and she had a large bruise on her back. The right side of her abdomen was said to be completely black and blue, and the inside of her thighs were as well. An autopsy would later determine that she had died as a result of internal bleeding from blunt force trauma, and her death was officially ruled as a homicide. 34-year-old Jerry Robinson and 29-year-old Ariel Robinson would be arrested 5 days after Victoria died, and they were both charged with homicide by CA. When first responders had first noticed the bruising on little Victoria's abdomen, her foster mother said that it must have been from her trying to perform CPR. The little girl's other injuries, she claimed, must have been from her biological 7-year-old brother, who had anger issues. Ariel said to authorities, "She bruises really bad. She has sensitive skin. Her brother kicks her and kicks her. He has anger issues. He's been in therapy for it." Typical, blaming another child. We see it all the time. Come to find out, the day before Victoria had died, on the morning of January 13th, the Robinson family had gone to church. And surveillance video taken there showed Ariel walking out with little Victoria, who was in just her underwear. According to the foster mother, they had been running 15 minutes late that day, and Victoria was eating in the car, but didn't finish her food. Then she had thrown up on her dress. 2 other parishioners said that they had seen Ariel in the bathroom washing Victoria's clothing. One of these people had asked if the little girl was sick, but the foster mother said no, she just eats too much and makes herself throw up. It's just a game. The other individual heard Ariel say to Victoria, "Oh, you're cold? You're cold? Girls who make themselves throw up deserve to be cold." Or maybe you really are America's worst cook and poor little Victoria just couldn't stomach your food. Ever think of that? Once church was over, the family returned home, but Ariel went out again a little while later to grab a few groceries. Meanwhile, Jerry gave Victoria a bath and noticed a bruise on her lower back, but didn't know where it had come from. He'd then put the children to bed for the night before his wife arrived back home. Then, according to Jerry, the next morning, the same morning that the little girl died, he had heard Ariel giving her a whooping with a belt. He was outside at the time, and it was so loud that he could still hear it. Jerry told authorities that the reason why his wife was so upset was because Victoria would not eat her pancakes quick enough. When Jerry went back inside the home, he found Ariel standing over the 3-year-old with a belt, saying, "You don't get to tell me when you're done." According to him, he told his wife that she had gone too far this time. After realizing how badly injured Victoria was, they gave her a bath in Epsom salt, hoping that the swelling would go down. A little while later, her stepfather ran out to CVS to purchase some liquid Tylenol. Now, Victoria's biological family had not been allowed to know the details of her and her brother's adoption. So when they found out that the little girl had died by seeing pictures of her on the news, they said they barely recognized her. Apparently, since the Robinsons had taken her in, she had lost a significant amount of weight. Victoria's family would also say that the signs of her mistreatment were all over social media. In one photo that the girl's foster mother had posted, Victoria has bruises on her right wrist. In another, she looks like she's got a healing black eye. And in a third, you can see big red marks on her neck. Other sinister warnings were there too. During one of Ariel's stand-up shows, she joked on camera about punching one of her children in the throat.
So the dog lasted for a little while. They kept going on about this sister, so I was like, we really want a sister. So now we're going through this adoption process. So we're trying to adopt a baby girl, and the social worker, they have to come over and, see that you're not too crazy to adopt. And so the whole way she's coming over, I'm telling my husband, I said, you know what, we should have locked the other two up in cages because if she meet them two, ain't no way they gonna give us another. She gets there, it's too late. They upstairs hollering, screaming. Where the moms at? Where the moms at? Okay, yeah, y'all don't like y'all kids either. So they upstairs hollering and screaming going on. You get to that mommy level and you done had it. So I can get this woman that's in my face. So I turn around, yell upstairs, shut up, I come in there and punch you in your throat. Turn back around, and she's looking at me the same way y'all looking at me. It's a game, I push them, they push me. We got approved.
Yet in her podcast, she talked about how she couldn't bear to watch the news anymore because it made her so upset, particularly when it came to hearing about children dying and CA. Also rather ironic was the fact that the foster mother had posted multiple times online about her commitment to social justice. Even once writing, "In my house, my black children get treated the same as my white children, and my white children get treated the same as my black children. It's a shame that when they go out into the real world, that won't be the case." And come to find out, Victoria and her brother's adoption by the Robinsons was set to be formalized just 5 days after she died. The same day that the foster parents would end up being arrested.
She was sweet as could possibly be, so it makes no sense how somebody could hurt her in any kind of way.
Ashley and Alan West last saw Victoria Smith, known to them as Tori, about a year ago. Alan says his aunt was the baby's foster mother for nearly a year before she went to live with the Robinson family.
A fun little girl.
She was funny. She was sassy.
Definitely had some sass to her.
I still can't believe that it's true. I just feel like maybe we'll all wake up and it'll be a bad dream.
You could not be mad at that girl just by the way she looked and how sweet she was. So I don't understand how this man and woman would have done this to her.
In April of 2022, Jerry Robinson would plead guilty to his charges of aiding and abetting homicide by CA. But for the time being, he was sent home on house arrest and was scheduled to be sentenced after Ariel was convicted on her charges. She would go to trial just a month later in May of 2022. During this time, a medical examiner described the blows to Victoria's body as being innumerable and said they had all been inflicted within an hour. They were as severe as if she had been in a car accident. Ariel's husband Jerry would be the first to take the stand, and he would testify that his wife had hit Victoria with wooden paddles and various belts. One of the biggest things that set her off was when the little girl didn't finish her food quick enough. He also claimed that sometimes he would take a piece of her food to help her out so she wouldn't get in trouble. Then he told the court that on the morning of January 14th, Victoria's brothers had all gone off to school, so it was just him, Ariel, and the little girl. He said that he had gone outside to do some yard work, and while he was out there, he heard his wife screaming at Victoria. So he went inside to check on everything and determined that things were fine, so he went back outside. That's when he heard Victoria crying and his wife screaming even louder. Jerry said at this point he knew that the 3-year-old was getting hurt, but he would wait more than an hour to go check on things again. When he finally went back inside, that's when he found his wife in the kitchen standing over Victoria with a belt. The couple had given her a bath after that, and around 1 p.m., Jerry left to go to CVS to buy some Tylenol. But when he returned home, he saw Victoria swaying back and forth before she suddenly went limp. The foster father testified that he had brought the little girl to her bed, and there they had their last conversation.
What's the last thing you recall Tori saying to you?
She was
laying on the bed before she got picked back up. And she told me she loved me. And I said, I love you too. I said, I promise this won't happen again.
Shortly after that, Victoria fell unresponsive, and Jerry called 911 while Ariel performed CPR. Now, someone from Child Services would also testify during the trial, and they said that their department had done monthly virtual checkups on the Robinson home, but none of these checkups had resulted in any concerns for the children. Then, when it was Ariel's turn to testify in her own defense, she took the stand, but would become overcome with emotion during parts of her testimony. She started off by saying that 3-year-old Victoria was the girl she always wanted after giving birth to 2 boys. She was a perfect child, her mini-me, and very easy to get along with. Then the foster mother claimed that she had never seen any bruises on Victoria's body until after she died. According to her, on the morning of the 14th, she had worked on her computer for about an hour while the little girl ate her breakfast. Afterwards, Victoria went to her room to play, but a little while later, she came out and said that she had peed her pants. So Jerry changed her, and Ariel sat with her in a chair with a heating blanket because the little girl was so cold and acting like she was going to throw up. Then suddenly, she'd gone limp, and 911 was called.
I hollered for Austin to come upstairs, and he came in the room when she was on her stool, and he looked at me and he was like, "Is she breathing?" And I said, I hear her trying to breathe. I hear something in her lungs though. It sounds like she's got like fluid in her lungs. And so they said, "Should I call 911?" I said, "Yeah, call 911 because I don't know what to do."
When Ariel was asked about the statements that her husband had made, she said that he was lying. While she didn't directly state that Jerry had caused the bruises to Victoria's body, she did say that he had been left home alone with the children after church while she went to the grocery store, and that he also had one of the scariest anger issues in which he would bottle it all up and then just erupt. Ariel went on to say that her husband had repeatedly lied to her throughout their marriage, and that their marriage was now shaky due to these lies and their limited finances. She claimed that she intended on leaving him and taking the children with her as soon as the adoption process had been finalized. Her trying to blame Jerry for killing Victoria, though, was quickly countered by the prosecution, and they shared a post that had been made by Ariel on Father's Day with the jury. It showed a photo of her husband and Victoria with a caption saying, "There's not a daddy-daughter duo in the world who love each other more than these two right here." In the post, she also says that Jerry was not the one who was responsible for disciplining the children. Then the defense would try to argue that Jerry had a history of lying, and they noted discrepancies between his testimony and what he had originally told law enforcement. Regardless, after a 4-day trial, Ariel Robinson was found guilty on her charges, and she was sentenced to life in prison. Her husband Jerry would then be sentenced to 20 years behind bars with credit for time already served. At the beginning of 2025, the foster mother tried to appeal the Food her Network would also and pull get the a new season trial. of America's Worst However, Cooks, that was denied by a
appeared,
judge, and she
from
will have
all
to serve the
streaming
rest of
services
her
following
life
her
conviction. And while she's been behind bars, Ariel has received disciplinary action several times, including for refusing to obey orders and sexual misconduct. Now, according to Victoria's biological mother, Cassie, she had done everything she could to get her children back. She'd taken multiple parenting classes and battered woman classes through Child Services. And while she didn't have a vehicle for a bit, she had tried asking for help several times. But she feels like she didn't get the help that she needed and was coerced into signing over the rights for her children. As I had said earlier, Victoria's family was never notified of her death and only found out about it through the news. Cassie had then called the agency to find out if the little girl was indeed her daughter like she suspected. But she was told by a social worker that they did not owe her an explanation, and then she was hung up on. The family even had to fight to get Victoria's body back from the state so that they could give her a funeral. Making Victoria's death even sadder, her relatives said that the 3-year-old girl loved to eat, and they find it very hard to deal with the fact that she was killed for not eating fast enough. Now Victoria's aunt, Michelle Earps, is working with lawmakers to get Victoria's bill passed, which would reform the South Carolina Department of Social Services. There was an online petition which gained over 48,000 signatures and asks for frequent and unscheduled visits for both foster and adoptive parents, even after adoptions are finalized. However, I was unable to find the current status of these efforts. Once her family was finally able to get her body back, they held 3-year-old Victoria Rose Smith's funeral privately. And a little over a year after her death, on January 15, 2022, a candlelight vigil took place in her honor. It was held at Gateway Park in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. Well, thank you for listening to Victoria's story today. From the sounds of it, this little girl and her brothers would have been much safer in their biological mother's care. Sure, she had some problems, but with a little help, she easily could have turned things around. Usually, we're advocating for social services to take children from their unsafe homes and place them into safer homes, and it seems like that's what they thought they had done. But sadly, it proved to be quite the opposite, and a fatal mistake. Welcome back. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The case I'll be talking about today is one that's almost too unbelievable to be true. And it's so horrendous that it's something you wouldn't even think a complete stranger would be capable of doing. Never mind a mother. This is the story of Giovanna Hernandez. Giovanna Laria Hernandez, lovingly called Gio, was born on August 30th, 2011 in Austin, Texas. Her parents' names were Refugio, Jr. for short, Hernandez, and Crystal Villanueva. Gio loved to sing, dance, watch funny YouTube videos, and she also loved playing with Shopkins and spending time with her adoring grandparents, who she would often host tea parties for. Gio also loved playing with her cousins. She was said to be a very kind and compassionate little girl. Crystal Villanueva and Junior Hernandez met when they were just teens. In 2011, Crystal, who was 19 at the time, became pregnant and soon gave birth to the couple's beautiful daughter, Gio. So sometimes the couple would live together with Gio, but there was other times where they would live apart. Junior would live with his mother, Nancy, and his stepfather, Eustorgio, in Kyle, Texas. And during those times, Crystal and Gio would stay with Crystal's family in Austin, Texas. Now, Gio's mother, Crystal, had a history of mental illness as well as drug abuse. So at the end of 2016, when Crystal was 24 and Gio was 5, Crystal and Junior discussed Crystal and Gio moving back in with him and his mother and stepfather. So then on January 3rd, 2017, Crystal and Gio did move back in with them to their home in Kyle. That night, Junior ended up having to take Crystal to the hospital because she had been repeatedly vomiting. Crystal would later say that she had a delusional break from reality, had shaved off some body hair, and drank bleach to rid herself of a witch. She also said that Nancy and Eustorgio, Junior's parents, were trying to poison her. She, however, never said any of this at the time that she was at the hospital, and she never told anybody else this. This was only later that she said that. So it's unsure if that's actually true or not. Then 2 days later, on January 5th, Junior and his mother had both left for work early that morning. Eustorgio spent the morning in his bedroom watching TV, while Crystal had done some laundry, bathed Gio, and then sat outside on her computer. Around lunchtime, Eustorgio was sitting at the kitchen table eating when Crystal walked in. Without a single word, she retrieved a large kitchen knife, then turned and returned to her room without a single word. Now, Eustorgio figured this was just normal behavior for Crystal. She often did this because she would cut up fruit and eat it while she was in her room. But after that, Eustorgio heard Gio saying, "No, mommy," but he said that it just sounded like her normal protests when Crystal was trying to take electronics away from her. Then, Crystal came back out to the kitchen and went to pass Eustorgio. As she did, she turned and stabbed him in the back 4 times. After that, he was able to turn around and face her. She then stabbed him twice more before he was able to bite her hand and Crystal dropped the knife. At which point, Eustorgio grabbed the knife and ran out of the house to the neighbor's house to call 911. While Eustorgio and the neighbor were on the 911 call, Crystal suddenly came out of the house holding a BB gun. She pointed the gun at Eustorgio and the neighbor, but luckily for them, it was broken. It didn't fire. Crystal then dropped the gun and turned around and went back inside. When she went back into the house, she also called 911. She told the operator, "These effing people are trying to kill me." And then she gave them her address. A couple minutes passed, and as the 911 operator was trying to ask Crystal more questions, she didn't answer any of them. When she finally did speak, she said that her dad was trying to kill her. When the operator asked her for her name, she at first said Crystal, but then said Nathaniel Walker. The operator asked if he had a weapon, and Crystal said, No, he was just watching TV. My daughter wanted some cereal, and I killed her. The operator, surprised, asked her if that was indeed what she said, to which Crystal responded, "Yeah, I killed her because she wanted some cereal, and then I stabbed my father-in-law." Minutes passed, and Crystal wasn't talking anymore, but the 911 operator could hear a loud banging noise. The operator asked her what she was banging on. She said, "Nothing, I'm just trying to cut my daughter's head off." The operator asked her why, and she said, "'Cause she wanted cereal." About 10 to 15 minutes after the initial 911 call placed by Eustorgio, police officers started arriving to the scene. Once there, they took the knife from Eustorgio and immediately sent him in an ambulance to the hospital, as he was bleeding quite a bit. Crystal's mother was also called, and she immediately drove from Austin to Kyle. Then the SWAT team arrived. Over the next hour, the SWAT officers called for Crystal to come outside. Crystal's mother spoke to the officers and offered to go inside, but they wouldn't allow it, for obvious reasons. She's gonna get her head cut off too. Eventually, the officers were able to get into the house, and Crystal came walking out of the bathroom wearing a towel. She had just taken a shower. She was placed under arrest immediately. She was flailing, kicking, and spitting at everybody as she was arrested. She was also smiling and laughing as she thought it was funny that she was giving them such a hard time. Hopefully that's what it was, and it wasn't for any other reason that she was laughing. They had to put a spit sock, padded helmet, and body restraint on her. The officers brought Crystal to the hospital, where she kept screaming and screaming. When the nurse asked her what her name was, she told her she didn't have a name. She was also trying to break free from her restraints, and then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, calmed down and asked the nurse for drugs. After she was brought to the hospital, Crystal was then brought to jail. On her way there, Crystal was in the back of the cop car crying and saying, "My baby, I didn't know it was her. Just kill me. I didn't know. I swear. I thought it was a doll. I thought it was an effing clone. I'm so sorry, baby. I swear to God." When the police interviewed Crystal, it was very bizarre. The officer read Crystal her Miranda rights and asked her if she understood. She said, "I'm trying to focus. There's so many voices in my head." The officer told her, "Just listen for my voice. Only listen to that voice." She told him that nothing else mattered because she had killed her daughter and she also had not slept in days. The officer ended up having to read her Miranda warnings 5 times before she would sign them. And when she finally did sign, she signed it no name. She later said that she thought the paper with the written Miranda warnings on it was a contract that they were trying to get her to sign to go work on the streets. Right. Crystal kept asking for Geo and pacing the room. Soon, she bent over and pulled down her pants and defecated in her hands. The officers had to come in and bring her to the ground to restrain her. So 5 days after being booked in jail, Crystal was diagnosed with psychosis and prescribed medication. However, medical records show that she never ended up taking the prescribed medication. Gio had been stabbed and then severely mutilated. Most of her injuries were post-mortem. Various appendages had been cut off. Her skin was sliced from the top of her back down the entire length of her back. Her head was removed, as well as organs that had been piled on top of her body. Both Junior and Eustorgio testified at the trial that Crystal seemed completely normal that morning. Crystal's mother and sister testified at her trial. Shortly before Crystal and Gio had moved in with Junior, they had been living with her mother and sister. Crystal's sister, Samantha, said that she had been spending a lot of time alone in her room, just staring at the ceiling and laughing to herself. She also said at one point she was sitting on her bed, taking apart her cell phone. When Samantha asked her what she was doing, she said, "You can't hear that noise?" Samantha said no, as her cell phone was in 2 different pieces, battery, cell phone. Apparently that didn't matter though, because at that point, Crystal just got some tweezers and started further picking apart the cell phone. Samantha said that she wasn't worried by this because this was normal behavior for Crystal. Crystal's mother would say that when she was just 9 years old, that's when the first signs of her mental illness started showing. Crystal's mother said that a cousin of Crystal's had inappropriately touched her when she was younger, and that had led to the family being driven apart. She said after that, Crystal began seeing a shadow boy or a shadow ghost around the house. But then, when the family moved to a new house, she said that she saw this shadow boy in the new house as well. It was said that during her teen and adult years, Crystal would sometimes hide in closets from invisible assailants. Sometimes she would just completely disappear for days. Once, she was gone for 3 days, and then when she came home, she ran into the house and said that God had touched her and shown her everything, but now the devil was after her. Crystal also believed that people were watching her through the air vents. She would tell her family that the devil was searching for her. Once, Crystal screamed at family members to get down and claimed to have seen a red dot on one person's head from a sniper gun. She said that these snipers were inside of trees outside of their home. Crystal's sister said that another time, while her, Crystal, and their children were shopping, Crystal disappeared. She later found her in the public restroom, saying that she was hiding from the CIA. She was scared to come out and would not come out until Samantha had reassured her that she had called off the CIA for her and they were no longer coming. Her mother and sister tried to attribute all this odd behavior to her mental illness, but she wasn't diagnosed with anything when she was younger. She wasn't actually diagnosed until she went to a drug rehab in 2015 for her substance abuse of crack and meth. There, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and ADHD. So Crystal's family was testifying that she had had these delusions for years. However, when they spoke to police after Gio's death, they told police that they believed all this behavior had been from drug use throughout the years. It wasn't until the case went to court that they all of a sudden started with the crazy defense for her. Her mother would say that she thought Crystal's odd behavior for years was because she smoked weed. Forget those other drugs there. Those are nothing. It's weed that you gotta worry about. Crystal said that 12 hours before Gio died, she had found herself standing over Junior with a knife, ready to stab him. But then all of a sudden, Gio stirred in her bed, and Crystal had snapped out of it. Many times, Crystal would say that she thought the devil was coming for Gio and Junior. She had also at one time told Gio that she was not her daughter, which made poor little Gio cry. One time in June of 2015, the police had encountered Crystal walking alongside a highway, supposedly fleeing from a man named Santana. The man, she said, was capable of turning into a bird and hunting down her, Junior, and Gio. From there, that's when she had gone to drug rehab, where she had been diagnosed with her different mental illnesses. She said that the reason why she had never told anybody about these delusions before is because she was afraid to be committed to a mental hospital, which would have been better than what happened to poor Gio. The doctor that had seen and treated Crystal testified that she was suffering from psychosis, which he said made her meet the requirements for an insanity defense, if the jury would buy that. There had been multiple times that Crystal appeared to have known exactly what she had done to Gio, like when she was on the 911 call, and she told the operator that she was cutting off her head. So the doctor that testified for Crystal believed that she had Capgras syndrome, which is the delusional belief that loved ones have been replaced with imposters. Crystal had believed that Gio had been replaced by a clone or imposter, and that she needed to kill this imposter in order to get her real daughter back. Crystal also believed that there was a key inside this imposter Gio that she needed to find in order to send this imposter back and get her daughter again. Her doctor said that Crystal did not understand that she was stabbing and cutting into a real person. The thing is, Crystal had never spoken of clones or dolls at any time during the 911 call or at the hospital after. It was only after her blood was drawn and she was tested for alcohol and marijuana that she started to talk about the clones and dolls. The jury ended up rejecting Crystal's insanity defense and found her guilty on both charges. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for a capital murder and another 20 years for the aggravated assault of Eustorgio. Her two sentences were ordered to run concurrently. Giovanna Hernandez's funeral was held at the Harrell Funeral Home in Kyle, Texas, and she was later buried on January 10th, 2017 at the San Juan Cemetery in Reedville, Texas. She is greatly missed by so many of her family members, especially her father, Junior. Well, thank you for listening to all of Giovanni's story today. I know this was a tough one to listen to as it was pretty brutal, so thanks for sticking in there. I really do appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me for the channel. Thank you for watching A Wicked World. Until next time, take care. Bye.